Welcome to another Chess.com podcast. And if you're new to these podcasts, then you've come in at a fantastic time. We've spent a good few podcasts, over 25 podcasts, looking at different puzzles, different tactics, different openings, different end games. But now we're going to start bringing everything together and to look more at the middle game. And this is probably the most interesting aspect of chess, because yes, there are certain end game techniques, there are certain opening theory lines, there are certain tactics one can carry out, but one aspect of chess that is often overlooked when people try to improve is the idea of combinations, which is just thinking through a middle game. You know, how do I play the middle game better? What should I be looking to do? And what you should be looking to do is to carry out a combination, which is a series of moves, which is either going to checkmate the opposing king, or gain you material, or give you a better position. But it's a series of linked moves. Now, in the combination, your opponent may have forced moves to make, or your opponent may have a number of variations. As long as you can calculate the number of variations, then you should think through to the end of your combination. If the thinking becomes too fuzzy, the variations become too many, then you have to take a step back, just play through as much as you can until you get to a stage where you can think through fully a combination. So in saying that, we're going to start with a very simple, easy example of a combination. Now here we have white to move. He's a rook and a pawn down, but white can win this endgame quite easily. Now the combination of moves that white wants to play, would simply be to push the pawn to f6 and then the queen to g7 and give mate. But there are a number of variations here. If we play the pawn to f6, well, let's just play that move. Black's got a number of replies. Now black can't take, obviously, because the queen pins the pawn. But what can black do? Well, he could push the pawn, but this is no good, because if the black pushes the pawn, then suddenly the square here and h6 becomes weak, and now white queen can come in there, and there's nothing to stop giving checkmate a move later. Here we have checkmate coming, and there's nothing black can do about it. You could possibly delay the checkmate for a move, but unfortunately that's all black could do. What other replies could black have? Well, black could try to sacrifice material, hoping that his passed pawn and his rook later on can cause white some problems. But white has to be careful here. You know, we've already discussed, that white wants to give checkmate here on g7, and one way of doing this is via the h6 square. So if the queen took on g4, then after g6, sure, white's up in material, which is a good outcome for this combination, but there's no successful way here of mating quickly. For example, the king could escape to the h8 square, and now there's no mate on g7. So if the queen came to sacrifice itself on h4, we still want to leave our option open to carry out our combination of moves, and we would take here with the pawn on h3 to g4. Now black would be forced into this combination of moves we've already seen. So we're going to go through one more of these combinations, make it a little bit more tough. I think it's another Capablanca one, but hopefully I'm going to, over the next few weeks, be introducing more and more this idea of combinations and combination theory. And I'd really like your input. Try and give me examples of where you've used successful combinations, where there's not just a series of forced moves, but a series of variations where you've gained either a better position or material advantage, or, like in this example, checkmated your king. So let's get on with the next example. Okay, this is the second and the last combination we're going to look at this chess podcast, and it's white to move, and this is a really good example of why it's a combination rather than just an endgame mating net, because a combination can have a number of outcomes and you must think through all of the possible outcomes. So what can white do here to win the game, or win significant material enough to win the game? The move that jumps out with white's pieces so active and black's piece so passive is to go for the king. It's justified, even though white is down in material, going for the king is justified because of how active these white pieces are. And the move is knight to e7 check. Now if black can think through a few moves, then he'll see that he'll get mated, so he may choose to give up his queen. Queen takes e7, queen takes e7. But with the queen on the 7th rank, the rook very active along the 3rd rank, and now white up in material, white's going to win this game. So you could say this is the end of the combination. This is one variation that we could go down and white wins. We need to look at other variations as well. Another variation would be the king moving to h8. Can white still carry out a series of moves that improves his position? Well, yes. I mean, the white queen can sacrifice itself on h7, with the knight covering the g6 and g8 squares. The king's forced to take. We have a forcing move here. King takes h7, and then rook to h3 is checkmate. So, my starting position, we play the move knight to e7, and there's either going to be a forced mate, or black is going to have to give up a significant amount of material. And that's why it's a combination, because there are a series of outcomes that can happen from the moves you make, but all of which are successful and improve white's position, or your position. If you think through something wrong, get variation thought through incorrectly, then you'll suffer a loss, and it's a bad combination. So we want to be looking more successfully at good combinations and good thought patterns, and that's why we started initially with a very basic kind of mating net with a mating combination, and making sure we can play through the two moves we wanted to, which was the f6 pawn and then giving mate on g7, and this one which either gaining significant material or mating the king on the h7 square. Now I hope you've enjoyed these this first introductory look into chess combinations. There's going to be much more coming, and there'll be bits of endgames in there, there'll be bits of kind of puzzles in there, there'll be tactics in there, there'll even be some opening play in there, but all of the examples we're going to look at are going to be centered around combinations and middle game theory, if you like. I hope you've enjoyed this Chess.com podcast. There'll be another one up next week.